We're delighted to welcome everyone. Today we have two very important speakers from Bitfinex. Bitfinex is one of the oldest digital asset and crypto platforms. And today we're here to discuss a very special topic. Bitfinex Securities got the first digital asset license issued from El Salvador under its new digital securities law. So we've invited Paolo Ardoino to come on. He's the Chief Technology Officer for Bitfinex. And we've also invited Jesse Knutson to come on, and he's the Head of Operations for Bitfinex Securities. Paolo, Jesse, how are you guys today?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Paolo, my first question, well, first I want to start by saying congratulations to both of you. But my first question to kick this off is, can you tell us, please, what this license means and what it will allow you to do and what it allows Bitfinex Securities to do?
Yeah, so I think we should start with a little bit of an overview on the current struggles of companies, especially in emerging markets and developing countries, struggles on raising capital for their activities, right? If you are a company and if you are a startup company in the US or Europe, it's fairly easy for you to be able to raise capital. You can raise capital through VCs, and the liquidity is extremely deep. If you are a US company in the Silicon Valley, well, now their main bank is kind of money up. But aside that, if you want to raise capital and you're a Silicon Valley startup, you ask for $1 million, they will not take even you seriously. You can raise 5, 10, 15, 20 million for your startup. But if you are, for example, in Italy or in Argentina or in Brazil or in Venezuela, El Salvador, and many countries, actually the majority of the countries of the world, the access to liquidity and capital and raising capital for your own company, for your vision, is not that easy. It's just a problem of accessing to capital and available liquidity in these countries. And so the missing piece in the securities world is a better, faster, more open, transparent way to put in contact companies that want to raise capital with investors. Right now, again, if a company wants also to raise capital, they have to go through roadshows. Well, first of all, they have to contract with different banks, brokers, and leave a ton of fees on the plate. That these fees are going to feed all the different intermediaries that will perform the placement of this available equity of this company that want to raise capital. But imagine a future where all these intermediaries are basically going away, and companies that want to raise capital can have a place to go. That would be Bitfinex Securities, a place to go that allows them to publish their idea, their key information document, their financials, their vision, and put them directly in contact with Bitcoiners. Bitcoin is today how much? A $600 billion market cap. At peak was like 1.2, 1.5 trillion. So Bitcoiners have a ton of liquidity that could be used to subsidize, to help companies that small, medium, big companies all around the world, especially in emerging markets, developing countries, that struggle to access to capital, not because they are like bad companies or don't have great ideas. They have great ideas. It's just they're finding themselves in a place that doesn't have access to capital as easy as the US or Europe. So Bitfinex Securities to me is this unique opportunity to create a more fair, transparent, open way for companies and investors to meet each other. Having access to digitalized securities means that all the stocks of a company or the debt, so it means bonds or even shares of funds, that can all be digitalized, so tokenized, and put them on a blockchain and being traded in secondary markets, all with the openness of the blockchain slash new way of dealing with with new way of cryptocurrency exchanges like Bitfinex of dealing with new investors, right? So I think cryptocurrency exchanges created this new way of approaching investors that is a way that is more transparent, more open than what you would have usually in the banking industry, where only a few people have access to really deep information about what's going on in the different in the different companies that they trade. Instead, I think with cryptocurrency exchanges, we are seeing much more openness. Of course, it's not all perfect. I'm not claiming that, but we are on the right track of providing more information, giving more opportunities, having more diversity, have lower fees and easier access. Cryptocurrency exchanges can onboard retails, while the majority of the good deals are not available to retails in traditional finance. So, long story short, I think it is time for also the securities industry to completely change, and I think this El Salvador story is once again of paramount importance, because El Salvador first started to make Bitcoin legal tender, and then now moved to create these new opportunities that will make El Salvador the leader of not just the Bitcoin space, but also the leader of digital securities, because it's extremely rare to find a regulatory regime that is advanced, that understands Bitcoin, that supports Bitcoin, that doesn't look at Bitcoiners as someone that is there to eat their own lunch. Because if you go anywhere else in other regulatory regimes, you still have to challenge the traditional banking industry that doesn't like digitalized securities, because that would pose a threat to their dominance. Instead, in El Salvador, as they did with Bitcoin, they decided that it was time for them to show to the world that the advancement of ideals, vision, and openness that they did with Bitcoin could be also brought to digital securities.
Thank you very, very much for that detailed answer, Paolo. Sheil has joined us, and he's going to ask the next question. So, Sheil, go ahead.
Hi, thanks very much, Ricardo. And thanks, Paolo, for doing this. A very interesting question, answer, and very detailed. I was wondering if you could help our audience understand what kind of companies and entities that you see approaching us to issue digital securities for them. Who do you think are going to be the most interested in wanting to have digital assets issued through this new entity?
So we had in the past months a lot of companies from a really huge variety of fields approaching us to understand how Bitfinex Securities would work and how they could participate. I must say that I think the most exciting opportunities are coming from the microfinance aspect, and also all those. I'm not expecting on Bitfinex Securities to have only tech companies, right? So I think eventually, great opportunities, but they could become boring. Imagine like a coffee producer in El Salvador or in Peru that wants to expand its own activity, want to cut intermediaries, want to reach a global market, want to export his own coffee somewhere, right? Right now, it is basically, it's really hard for a company, a mid-sized company that would do this, to raise capital or raise debt. And so I envision that that could be a great opportunity to have a pitch from a company producing coffee, to showcase their potential, their existing business to investors, and potentially raise debt, so issue a bond that they would repay maybe in 2 3 years. That would give them, this bond would give them the resources to expand their operations globally. Make new, open new markets maybe, right? So, and that is just an example. Or like microfinance, how companies that can actually reach people, communities on the territory, to provide them capital to expand, to reform their technology infrastructure, to improve the quality of their lives and productivity, and still in the form of bond. So I think agricultural, real estate, the secondary resources are, in my opinion, and first and secondary type of industries are the ones that are more interesting to me. I think, given where is going the world, I think if I have to bet on something that I find really, really interesting as a market, is agricultural. I think is going to be massive in the next 10 years. So I wish to see many agricultural companies that are expanding themselves. They are, maybe improving the current equipment, reinvesting in adding more resources to their enterprise. And if we can do that through Bitfinex Securities and help them, that would be insanely cool. Of course, tech companies, I am expecting them, and we are seeing also interest from commodities, and mining operations. So we have been in touch with some miners, gold miners that are interested to raise capital to improve their extraction capabilities and so on. So it's extremely, there are many different requests. I'm just, my personal point of view is would be agricultural is more exciting.
Thank you, Paolo. My next question is, how is issuing digital assets through a provider like Bitfinex Securities different or more advantageous than issuing equities or bonds or investment funds in traditional finance avenues?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned in my really, really long introduction, apologies for that. I think the big difference is that in traditional finance, you have so many intermediaries and banks that will take care of your placement, that will eat a lot, will put a big dent in the capital that you are raising for your company, right? So the way we envision Bitfinex Securities is much cheaper, so ability to reach millions of investors, at the same time much lower fees. So that is I think a huge potential that has been unexplored till today. So that is the biggest advantage, in my opinion.
Thanks, Paolo, for that answer. I understand that we also have a similar entity that's already licensed in Astana, in Kazakhstan. I was wondering how much interest we're seeing so far for this product through that entity, and just what the pipeline of future issuance looks like for digital assets. I know we've issued one. I'm just wondering what the future issuance looks like and how much interest we're seeing.
Yes, so I think both Astana and El Salvador are strategic, right? So one is great to serve Asia, and the other one for Central America and South America. You could argue that both Asia and South and Central America are the two parts of the world, apart Africa, that are growing so rapidly compared to the rest. So I think if you think about Bitfinex Securities having a strategical footprint in specific areas, I think these are the two areas that are more strategic because it could open the entire, basically almost the entire globe to our company, to Bitfinex Securities, to accept companies from basically really 2/3 of the entire world. The one in Astana will cover the entire Asia. The one in El Salvador will cover Central and South America.
Thank you, Paolo. My next question is, what kind of demand do you think there's going to be for these tokenized securities, like as a new form of digital assets? And are you focusing mostly on like retail investors, or do you see institutions coming into this as well?
Well, I think both, right? So I have been in discussions with the information about the potential, so our work to obtaining a license in El Salvador and our existing license in Astana have made institutions already contacting us interested to understand how this would work. Because in the end, access to capital is fundamental for everyone, from the small, mid, big companies, but also to institutions and even countries sometimes.
Thanks, Paolo. So do you think, obviously we've talked about Astana and we've talked about San Salvador, do you think there will be more jurisdictions that could follow? I mean, who could be next? And what about the major financial centers such as London or Hong Kong or Singapore or Tokyo? What's their attitude? I mean, essentially, who's going to be next, and what are the big centers doing or thinking about this?
Well, I think the big centers are the ones that have, in a way, more to lose, creating more openness in their markets, right? So the reason I think Astana has been leading with their financial zone, sort of a free trade zone, and has attracted many companies, among which us there. And on the other side, you have El Salvador. Both of these, in both situations, I think there was a willingness of disrupting the current establishment and providing alternative opportunities to both investors and companies. So if you ask me, I'm not super bullish on many new regulators in specific countries willing to take on the same risk, because there is a lot of pushback also from the traditional finance, and it's one of the reasons why I find this even more exciting, because it means that if there is so much pushback, means that we are on track of doing a good thing, because having the ability of trading digitalized securities only in the hands of few is not great, especially create some sort of monopolies that I think with Bitcoin disrupting the monopoly of money, we have been seeing how powerful that can be, and we are seeing how powerful it's been for El Salvador itself.
Thanks, Paolo. My next question is one that I think everybody is been dying to ask you. Bitfinex has been named as the financial technology provider for the Volcano Token that has been very, very hyped in the media. And then also there's a lot of excitement around it in the community as well. So do you have more information, now that the license has been granted on where El Salvador is at with issuing this Volcano Token, and how soon people can expect to see it?
So Of course, this is a work in progress. Um, the information, the new information we got is that there is an interest to improve on the Volcano token. Initially, was mainly considered a bond-like opportunity, but recently there was the idea, and I think is the right path to convert it into more an equity offering. I think from although the interest, as you said, the interest of in the initial version of the Volcano token was really high. The feedback of the investors have been that everyone wants to have a piece of the El Salvador story, right? So if you invest in a bond, eventually the bond will be repaid, and then you get back the money that you invested, and that's it, right? So you don't have anything anymore. But if you invest instead, if the offering is more like an equity offering, you can actually own a piece of El Salvador. You can be part of the story. You can continue to contribute. You can feel more attached to it rather than simple bond/interest offering. So I think what we are going to see in the future is a pivot towards having this equity offering. And honestly, I find I think is a brilliant move because could create the first real example of a unicorn that comes out from El Salvador, and is an example for many other companies that could follow.
Thank you very, very much, Paolo. Do you think that other governments will want to issue tokens like this? And if so, like, what's the next domino to fall, I guess?
Well, I'm pretty. See, I think that as soon as the El Salvador token will become a success, many other countries, especially small countries, will start scratching their heads, thinking, okay, how I can do that? How I can be like El Salvador? But I think, of course, well, depends on the size, but there are not many countries that can afford what El Salvador is doing, because it's not just about creating a company and tokenize it. The importance is also the story, is the commitment that you show to the people that are living there, and and also to the world, right? So issuing a token is one thing, being able to fulfill the capital raising is another thing. So other governments will need to prove publicly that they are worth of the trust of investors, and will be interesting to see.
Thanks very much for that, Paolo. We have, as a company, also stated in our Freedom Manifesto that we want to drive much greater financial freedom and financial inclusion for communities who don't have access to traditional financial markets. It's a big part of what Bitfinex stands for. How does this license further that cause?
Yeah, I think creating a more open, transparent way to both access to capital for companies and invest into companies from the investor's point of view is a way to continue in the same direction, right? So, of course, this process has to abide to the regulatory requirements that have been provided by and written in the El Salvador law. But from the ethos point of view, I think is really, really well aligned with our Freedom Manifesto. The concept. We don't want to have like dog tokens or like all the crazy new layer ones trying to blockchain layer ones trying to raise capital on Bitfinex Securities. We want actual companies that are working, building quality services or farming, but not DeFi farming, actual farming, right? So in countries to apply to Bitfinex Securities and raise capital and create great stories of success. And that is a way to achieve financial freedom, because the problem of so the concept of financial freedom is to have everyone being able to access in a democratic way and form uh, to financial services. So right now, the financial services are feel like a monopoly, and they are extremely skewed. So the access to financial services is extremely skewed towards like the first world, right? So the Europe, the US, the Canada, and Singapore, and Kong. But that is not financial inclusion. That is not financial freedom. People should be able to do their own research. Of course, should have access to information, should have education, should have same opportunities to make to be in charge of their own fortune. And I think Bitfinex is leading the way in that direction.
Okay, thank you. I think that was extremely well put. I'm going to change directions here quickly. We also have Josué Lopez here with us. He's the consul of El Salvador at Lugano's Bitcoin embassy. And I wanted to ask him if he could kind of shed some light on the El Salvadorian perspective of Bitcoin adoption, how it's been advancing, and then also the digital asset license being issued and what this means, and if there's more licenses that are going to be issued to other companies, et cetera.
Hey, everyone, and thank you for the introduction, Ricardo. So for giving an El Salvadoran perspective, I think it's important to understand the context where El Salvador was. And as Paolo mentioned, El Salvador didn't lack good ideas. It didn't lack good market. It really only lacked efficiency in the capital markets. I think this was a problem that was created, for the past 30 years, ever since the Civil War. Countries just started thinking of El Salvador as a risky investment. They started shedding us with their extremely high interest rates. And there's a really good stat that I always like to quote. Even though the average interest rate for debt in El Salvador is about 6.6 to 7%, I've seen loans here going to companies that are collateralized up to 100% loan to value. And these interest rates are as high as 14 to 18%. So obviously you cannot expect many companies to be able to uphold these sort of debt, interest rates. And this is the importance of peer-to-peer securities offerings. So kind of bypassing that sort of credit risk agencies that are very biased on, not to name any countries, but, on specific geopolitical policies. It is very important for Salvadoran companies to be able to bypass that, to be able to raise equity directly from investors. So as you mentioned, I was about 6 months ago, I was sworn in as honorary consul of El Salvador in Switzerland, and I mainly based my professional career in private equity. And I was able to see how easy it was for companies, even pretty inefficient companies at management or over leveraged companies to raise capital. And healthier companies in El Salvador weren't able to do that because of their lack of access to efficient capital markets. So in this case, first of all, congratulations to Paolo and to the entire team at Bitfinex for having this huge first step in El Salvador. It's definitely going to bring a lot of opportunities to Salvadoran companies, but more than that, I think it's going to bring a lot of opportunities to individual and institutional investors that want to invest in El Salvador. El Salvador is in in great supply of amazing ideas. It's a great market. It's a low labor cost ecosystem. It has great connections to, well, it's in the center of North America and South America. So, it's a perfect bridge for the flow of capital from North America to South America and vice versa. And it's also the great bridge between agricultural products that are produced mainly in South America to the main services or consumers in North America and vice versa. So I think this is a really great and pioneering step for Bitfinex, for El Salvador, and for everyone that believes in freedom and in the ability of investment in efficient, clear, regulated, and capital markets.
Thanks very much. That's really, really interesting to hear your perspective, and would love to just keep you on. I think we'll have a few more questions for you. Paolo, I wanted to ask, you mentioned about the way that you think the Volcano token could look when it eventually comes, and how after feedback it's changed. I'm just interested in what kinds of other structures we could see from other types of issuers. Do you think that people are looking more towards kind of equity structures as opposed to bonds or investment funds, or how do you see that developing?
Sure. So I think especially with the growing interest rates, we are seeing what is happening to U.S. Treasury bills. So the growing interest rates are making really difficult for companies to issue debt in this particular moment in time, right? So especially companies that don't have a clear rating. So I would expect that the bond style offerings to be a bit on the back burner, rather than I think equities and also tokenized funds could be quite interesting. So you could actually have a fund that invests in traditional markets and or real estate with specific with a specific vision, and of course all the necessary disclosures. And you could tokenize that fund, and you could make it available into Bitfinex Securities. So you could have a fund, for example, that invests in US Treasuries or like some other high quality bonds, and tokenize them and list it on Bitfinex Securities. So that is, in my opinion, extremely promising. Is a way to and also gives the opportunity to Bitcoin traders to potentially hedge themselves in different manners, or you could have like a mining fund that would invest in either pure like gold mining or similar like gold, silver, like copper, and all the basic commodities. So that is another opportunity. So I think all these funds you could have more. The sky in this case is really infinite, but I think equities and funds are the most exciting ones.
Thank you. My last question is, we've heard a lot about the benefits and the new kinds of things that are going to be possible with tokenized securities, but what would you say to critics? Are there any downsides that you see or any disadvantages from issuing tokenized securities?
It's important to remember that these tokenized securities are not going to be the Far West. So they are regulated, first of all. They require a full disclosure of all the important pieces of the company, structure, operations, and so on. Will require the disclosure of financials and updates of the financials. So that is exactly what you would expect from the traditional markets. But you have the plus of having more openness, transparency, ability to access capital, and so on. And I can already hear some bankers saying that some companies could fail, but how many companies fail in the traditional markets. How many companies went bankrupt? How many funds disappeared? And so I think the work that we have to do on our side is a proper due diligence of all these opportunities to better evaluate the ones that we deem more solid and also adapt to Bitfinex Securities in the ethos, in the vision that I was describing before. So no, I don't think there is any downside. I think there are just upside, and is the right direction, is the direction that is also more future-proof. I don't think we can continue to have access to capital and control over issuances in the hands of few. It has to be more distributed across the globe and more evenly distributed in general.
Thanks very much, Paolo. So we're looking forward now to a world where we're going to see, a lot more digital assets trading on a securities platform which is regulated and compliant, which is, really a major development. I just wonder what you then see for other types of trading platforms like peer-to-peer markets. Do you think there'll be a peer-to-peer market for security tokens, or you think that's something that can't happen? How do you see this happening? Because these are securities issued on a blockchain. So how does that technology develop across other types of platforms like peer-to-peer?
So being a fully regulated market, there is the necessity to link the ownership of the shares towards, with a specific person or entity. So the KYC part is going to be still a critical part of the process. So when you onboard on Bitfinex Securities, but also when you trade on secondary markets, there is a full verification requirement. That is part, of course, of the regulation. Also, in the future, what I envision is that this part will be improved so that you don't have necessarily to give all your information to all the parties involved, but there could be a situation where zero knowledge proof and digital identity will allow you to trust only one single party with all your information, and then you can use a zero knowledge proof to prove to the for example, a trading platform that you are eligible to trade that security, and you are in fact an eligible shareholder to, for example, being credited in an interest. So, of course, there is a lot of work to do on this aspect. Digital identities and zero knowledge proof identity solutions are one, I think, of the hot topics of 2022 and 2023, 2024. So we will see a lot of progress there. But until then, I think is the blockchain aspect is just a transport layer for securities, is not a privacy layer.
Well, thank you very much, Paolo. That's been really insightful. I really appreciate all your time, and thank you to Ricardo, my co-host, in asking these questions. This is all that we have time for, but do please stay connected to BFX Securities, our Twitter handle, on new developments as they occur in this very, very exciting space.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.